Chapter 9 The Sacredness of Time. Brother David Steindl-Rast once commented that leisure is not the privilege of those who have time, but rather the virtue of those who give to each instant of life the time it deserves. That's valuable insight, especially today when everywhere life seems dominated by the constraints of time. Always, it seems, there isn't enough time. Our lives are dominated by pressure, the rat race, demands that are all absorbing. The manufacturing plant has to run, and by the time that is taken care of, there is no time or energy for anything else. And we are conscious of our pathological busyness. We know that life is passing us by, and we are so preoccupied with the business of making a living and the duties of family and community that only rarely is there any time to actually live. It seems that there is never any unpressured time, unhurried time, undesignated time, leisure time, time to smell the flowers, time to simply luxuriate in being alive. We lament about this over our coffee circles, but are unable to effectively change anything. Is there something frighteningly wrong with our lives? Is there a need to drastically change our lifestyle? Perhaps. Obviously, in our lives there is too little family time, prayer time, celebration time, and simply restful time. But we are also compounding our problem through misunderstanding. Philosophies of taking time to smell the flowers have sometimes led us to understand leisure precisely as the privilege of the rich and unoccupied. What Steindl-Rast challenges us to do is to understand time correctly. Time is a gift. When T.S. Eliot says, "Time, not our time," he is pointing out that there needs to be a certain detachment from time, a certain monasticism in our lives. Monks and nuns know that time is not their own, that they must often drop whatever they are doing and move on to what is being asked of them next. When the bell rings, St. Benedict once said, the monk must put down his pen without crossing the T or dotting his I. He must move on, not necessarily because he feels like doing something else, but because it is time. Time to eat, or pray, or work, or study, or sleep. Monks' lives are regulated by a bell, not because they don't have watches or alarm clocks, but to remind them always that time is not their own and that there is a proper time to do things. Monks don't get to sleep, eat, pray, work, or relax when they feel like it, but when it's time to do those things. There is an astonishing parallel between that and what happens in our own lives, and we can be helped by understanding it. There is an inbuilt monasticism to our lives. At least for the more active years of our lives, we too are called to practice a certain asceticism regarding time, to have our lives regulated by the bell. In our case, it takes a different form. Though its demands are the same, in our case, it's an alarm clock and it dictates of our daily lives, a quick breakfast, a commute to work, carrying a lunch bag, staying at home with small children, demands at work or home, driving kids for lessons, dealing with them and their demands, household chores, cooking, laundry, taking out garbage, calling in the plumber, church on Sundays. Like monks, we sleep, rise, eat, pray, and work, not necessarily when we'd like to, but when it's time. This is true not just for our daily routine, but as well as for the seasons of our lives. We go to school. We prepare for a career. We enter the workforce. We are tied down with kids. mortgage payments, car payments, and the demands of family and work, not necessarily because we always feel like it, but because it's time in our lives. The play of children and the leisure of retirement come before and after that season. During all the most active years of our lives, we are reminded daily, sometimes hourly, that time is not our own. We are monks practicing a demanding asceticism. There will not always be time to smell the flowers, and we are not always poor for that fact. Monasticism has its own spiritual payoffs. To be forced to work, to be tied down with duties, to have to get up early, to have little time to call your own, to be burdened with the responsibility of children and the demands of debts and mortgages, to go to bed exhausted day after a working day is to be in touch with our humanity. It is too It is too an opportunity to recognize that time is not our own and that any mature spirituality makes a distinction between the season of work and the Sabbath, the sabbatical, the time of unpressured time. Most important of all, recognizing in our duties and pressures the sound of the monastic bell actually helps us to smell the flowers, to give each instant of our lives the time it deserves, and not necessarily the time I feel like giving it. We are better for the demands that the duties of our state in life put on us, despite constant fatigue. Conversely, the privileged who have all the time in the world are worse off for that. Despite their constant opportunity to smell the flowers, these are monastic secrets worth knowing.